Morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2014 annual meeting of the Newfound Area School District. This is our first session of the annual meeting. The annual meeting right now, since we're a Senate Bill 2 town, is conducted in two sessions. This is our deliberative session, and then we will have a voting session. Today we're going to be going through the warrant articles, having our debate, questions answered, and then we'll come back for voting on town meeting day, which is March 12th. I do have to make a couple of announcements. If you read in your, excuse me, I think that's March 11th. If you read in your warrant, if you read the warrant, it indicates that voting in Bristol will take place. Some of the information that was distributed indicates that the voting would take place at the Old Town Hall, and in fact, the voting will take place at the Marion Center, which is the facility up at the foot of the lake by the Catholic Church. And there's also another announcement, and that is with regard to voting hours. And the voting hours in New Hampton are from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And they show in the book, I think they show from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., but it's actually 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. As we do always, we begin our session with a pledge of allegiance to the flag, and I'm going to call upon Hilda Bruno to lead us in the pledge this morning, if you'd all stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Ned Gordon. I'm the moderator for the school district. If you'll just indulge me for a second. This is my 21st consecutive year serving as your annual meeting moderator. The annual meeting is not the school board's meeting. It's not the budget committee's meeting. It is the people's meeting. That is why the moderator is separately elected by the people and by law cannot be an employee of the school district or a board member. But ideally, in addition to being independent, a moderator should be someone who values education, who comes from or cares for the community, and who's fair and objective. The reason that I mention that this morning is because we lost someone this last year who previously served as your moderator. And that was T. Holmes Moore. And I thought he should be recognized here today. But understood, actually through his own experience, that if the kids in our community want to get on the train to opportunity, then their best ticket is getting a meaningful education. He knew that if you want your business to be successful, if you want your community to be successful, or you want your schools to be successful, you need to invest in your business, you need to invest in your community, and you need to invest in your schools. And all of us who knew Bud experienced his sense of fairness and his goodwill toward all, regardless of their status in the community. Now we're coming together today with many different backgrounds. Some of us are natives. Some of us have adopted this area as our home. We have different religious beliefs. We have different ethnic backgrounds or national origins, and I am certain that we have a variety of different family relationships. But regardless of our differences, we are all here because we care about our kids and our community, and let us treat each other with respect and conduct our business today in the spirit of Bud Moore. We'll begin, as we do, with introductions. I'm going to call upon Paul Migliore, the chair of our school board, to introduce the school board members.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome here on this fine weather weekend for both the session and the Super Bowl. We have from the far end coming towards me first Mr. Lloyd Belbin, who has served 3 years on the school board from Bristol. And next to him is Paul Reinhardt from New Hampton, who has also served for 3 years on the board. Next to Paul is Dawn Franklin, representing Hebron. And next to Dawn is Jeff Levesque from Groton. Ruby Hill sits to Jeff's left from Danbury. And Sue Cheney, who is our senior board member from Alexandria, sits next to Ruby. Mike Lamani is our new business administrator, hired this past year, along with Superintendent Stacy Buckley, who has started with us on July 1st. And my name's Vincent Paul Migliore. I am from Bridgewater.
And introducing the Budget Committee, it's Chair Fran Wendelbo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I'd like to recognize Paul Reinhardt, who you just were introduced to, because Paul does double duty. He is the school board's representative on the Budget Committee, so he does both jobs, and he is from New Hampton. At the far end, we have Skip Riley from Alexandria, William Joseph from Bristol. We have Jeff Bird from Bridgewater. We have Sharon Nelson from Groton, Stan Newton from Hebron, and then we have our vice chair, Simon Barnett from Danbury. And as the moderator said, I am Fran Wendelbo from New Hampton. Thank you.
I think down at the end of the Budget Committee table is Lee McDevitt, and she's going to be our clerk today. She's taking the minutes. It's important that we keep accurate minutes as well. We're just in terms of setting the guidelines, first couple of announcements. There are refreshments being served today. You should be aware of that. The senior class is serving refreshments. I went back there. They have a wide variety of coffee, sodas, water. They have chili. They have macaroni and cheese. They have hot dogs, potato chips, anything you want. So. And they were saying they were hoping it's a long meeting. Then you should you should make sure that you go back and, if you can, help them out. There's also babysitting services, or I shouldn't say babysitting. There's child care services in the library down the hall, and you should avail yourselves of those if you do have children here today. In terms of the way we conduct the meeting, you all know that the only people that are entitled to participate in today's meeting are registered voters in the 7 towns that form the district. So the only people who are entitled to speak here today will be registered voters. The only people who are entitled to vote will be registered voters. And we haven't made a point in this district, because it's never been a problem in the past with regard to segregating people who are not registered voters, but I would like to have anyone who is not a registered voter just raise their hand so we can identify you today. Okay, you all got that? As I often say, we don't want to see you move your lips. The one exception that we do make to that are school officials, not school employees, but school officials. So in terms of the superintendent or the business manager wanting to speak, we generally make an exception for them, and I'm going to allow that to happen. But if other people who are non-residents want to speak, then they would have to get the permission of the body to do that. We're going to go through the warrant articles today. We'll go through them in order, unless someone moves otherwise. Someone will be designated to speak on the article. I think somebody's been designated to speak on each article. And then after they've given their initial speech, we'll open it up to discussion, questions and discussion, comments. You need to use the microphone. So there are microphones on either side. You come down to the microphones. That's the preference. If you just raise your hand, you sit in your seat, you want to speak, I'll eventually call on you, but I tell you, I'm going to give preference to anybody who's at the microphone. So you can raise your hand. If somebody else comes to the microphone after you raised your hand, they're going to get called on first. It takes a lot of time if we have to wait for people to get up out of their seats and come to the microphone. So everybody needs to come to the microphone. This is being taped, and it's important that everybody use the microphone so that all those people who will be watching this later can have the benefit of what you have to say. All your questions and comments need to be directed to the moderator. So if you have questions of somebody, we'll do your very best to get an answer for you, but you need to direct those questions to the moderator. Everybody will have an opportunity to speak. If you came here today and you wanted to talk on a particular article, my policy is everybody who comes gets an opportunity to speak once, okay? And then after that, I won't close the debate until after everybody's had their opportunity. But, you know, if it starts getting repetitive and people wanted to speak twice or 3 times, then at that point in time, I'll probably take a motion to close the debate. And that's the way what we'll do is we'll discuss the article, and then when it's been thoroughly discussed, I'll take a motion from somebody to close the debate, and then we'll vote to close the debate on the article, and then we'll move on to the next article. You can make amendments to articles. Generally, to the wording of the article, you can't really change the substance of the article itself, but if it's a financial number in the article, you may make amendments. If you're going to make an amendment, you need to do that in writing today. And if you make that amendment, the thing is you can't speak and then make an amendment after you speak. You have to make your amendment first, and then you can speak to your amendment if you want to do that. Again, amendments have to be in writing. So if you intend to make one, start writing now. We try to do our very best with regard to voting. I do my best to try to distinguish. As I get older, my hearing gets worse, but we'll do it by voice vote whenever we can. And if I can distinguish the voice vote, I'll call it based upon your voice. If I can't, then I'll call just for a show of hands. Lots of times I can just tell by the number of hands that are raised how a vote goes. And if I can't do that, then we'll actually count the hands. And if necessary, we'll do ballot votes. The one thing that you need to know is every time we take a ballot vote, you know, you're looking at a length of time, you know, and it can take, I'm not sure it would take that long today, but it often takes as much as an hour to do a ballot vote. So you need to be aware of that. So we try to avoid the ballot votes if we can, but if 7 people stand up after we've discussed something and say they want to have a ballot vote, we'll have a ballot vote. When you speak, this goes without saying, but when you speak, you need to be courteous of everybody. I always say that the best speech is a speech like the Gettysburg Address, short and to the point. The best speech, and when I was in the legislature, they always said the best speech is a 3-minute speech, because after that, people start losing or stop paying attention. And of course, refrain from using any profanity or disparaging remarks. And that doesn't mean that you can't be critical. If you have a public official, public officials, you know, you can be critical of public officials. If you say, I think Ned Gordon does a lousy job as a moderator, that's a fair criticism. If you say, I think Ned Gordon's an idiot, that's probably not the more appropriate remark, okay? So, and finally, the whole idea is that we conduct the meeting fairly and as expeditiously as possible, efficiently as possible. And so that's what we're going to do today. We'll go through everything and try to be as fair as we possibly can. So even if you don't agree with the outcome today, it's my hope that when you leave the meeting, you'll say, I don't agree with it, but I think it was fair. And the one last thing is that you can always overrule the moderator. So I'll use my best judgment as we go along here today, but if at any point in time you don't think the right decision's been made, you can overrule the moderator at any time. That's your right. It's the people's meeting. And with that, we'll begin the warrant articles. Article 1, of course, being to choose all necessary school district officials for the next year, and again, that's going to be on March 11th, which is the town meeting day. Article 2, teacher contract agreement to see if the Newfound Area School District will vote to approve the cost items included in a 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Newfound Area School Board and the Newfound Area Teachers Association, which calls for the following increase in salaries and benefits. Year 2014, 2015, estimated cost $277,225. Year 2015, 2016, estimated cost $271,747. Year 2016, 2017, estimated cost $312,479. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $277,225 for the 2015 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Article is not included in Article 7, which is the operating budget. The school board voted to recommend the article 6-1, and the budget committee voted not to recommend the article 7-0. And is there someone to speak on the article?
Thank you. Oh, do you want to go to the first slide? Okay. Okay. First, the board wanted all 7 members to be part of the negotiating committee, but there was a scheduling conflict with Mr. Reinhardt. So 6 of us were on the negotiating committee. We started meeting in October, and we concluded in January with a Saturday of work with a mediator. And arrived at this contract that you have before you. We were looking at a few things. We wanted a 3-year agreement. Last year we just had a 1-year agreement. We wanted to recognize the 2% tax cap and stay well within that. We wanted to change language so that we would end up with increased time with students for the teachers, as opposed to them spending some time on duties if possible, and we wanted increased student performance and outcomes, so that was where the language was going. We looked at cost of living changes over the last few years when there wasn't a contract, as well as the increased retirement for teachers. Those 2 things totaled 7.9% change in their purchasing power, so we also were aware of that. Okay, so this is the major language change. I'm sorry, I have to turn to look at it a little. Right now, the contract includes 19 days of authorized leave, which means really people can take vacations because the language is so loose that there's not really accountability to the superintendent. And the current cost of the district based on the average taken outside of long-term leaves is 12 days per year at $780 using our $65 a day sub-pay. We thought that if we could get that reduced, we could use some of that money toward a raise instead. And then the student performance will be better, of course, if their teachers are in the classroom. So that was giving us increased control over costs and learning. Pictures. Okay, so we started with cost of living adjustments. We have more than 50% of our people in the contract, which are nurses, guidance counselors, and teachers, at the top step, meaning they don't get matrix raises, they don't move up anymore. So this would give them 2% in year 1, 2% in year 2, and 2.5% in year 3. The average cost of living increase in the last decade was 2.64% per year. And this provides a cost of living adjustment not just to the people on the top step who don't get raises anymore, but also increases the base. And we looked at 2 lists of contracts. We looked at our cohort districts that are used for the district task force, the data task force, and we looked at what their contract language was, and we also looked at what their salary matrices were. And this will also change the base so that we're competitive with them. We're not the richest district, but we're not the poorest district, so we were looking at being in the middle range. Co-curricular stipends will also increase just in the first year by 2%. They haven't had a raise in a decade. So that would be changed. And I did out the costs and had the business administrator double check them to show you what this would cost you in your town if you had a property valued at $200,000. So in Alexandria, about $56 for the first year of the contract. In Bristol, $37. In Bridgewater, $13. In Danbury, $57.62. In Groton, $30.42. In Hebron, $8.32. And in New Hampton, $37.20. So that's the cost of the taxpayer if this passes and they have a $200,000 property. I think that's it.
Questions or comments?
Janet Cody from Bristol.
Just hold on, Janet, just for a second. Yeah, you can speak. Hi, Janet. Janet,
Could I
what-
hear from the Budget Committee why they
can
didn't?
you hold on just for a second?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for identifying yourself and saying where you're from, because I neglected to say that at the very beginning. When you do begin to speak, just identify yourself, who you are, and what town you're from. That would be helpful. Thank you, Janet.
Could I have the Budget Committee speak to why they didn't recommend this?
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Cody. Actually, I was just whispering to the moderator that the Budget Committee should have the opportunity to talk about why we did not recommend this particular warrant article. If you look at the dollars involved, at first it seems very innocuous, 2%, 2.5%. But then if you look at the actual figures, for example, a step one employee right now would be making $34,370. At the end of this 3-year increase, they would be making $39,625 over a $5,000 increase, which comes out to roughly a 15% increase in salary in that 5 years when you add in the step increase and the cost of living increase. If you look at somebody who has is in a step 10 category, their salary is now $46,313. Under this increase, it would go to $54,485, which is an $8,000 increase over those 3 years, and costs out at about a 17.5% increase over 3 years. We felt that most of our taxpayers would not be looking at that large of an increase in their next 3-year salary from their employers, and being cognizant of the fact that the school tax rate went up approximately 7% this past year. We tried to keep the taxpayers in mind. And bear in mind, they just read the figures, and $57 for Danbury kind of stuck out in my mind, and it doesn't sound like much. But the second year, you would keep that $57, and you'd add roughly another $57. In the third year, you'd have the $57 plus the $57 plus another roughly $57. Granted, those who are already at the maximum step won't be getting those high percentages. They'll be getting just the cost of living increases. So with that in mind, we felt that adding a total of $861,000 by the end of 3 years, that is a substantial amount of increase, and we felt that perhaps it was too large. And as far as the give back of the 19 days, while we are, I understand, one of the very few school districts that have this floating time, but for any reason you could take up to 19 days, I believe if you add up all the days when they broke it down, it now comes to 25 days. Granted, everybody might not have every single category, but we feel that that give back did not come anywhere near being worth the value of the increases in dollars. And I don't believe we saw a decrease, an appreciable decrease budgeted in the substitute teacher line to offset that. So there really is no projected savings at this point in time. Thank you.
Slim?
Steve Spafford, some people call me Slim, most people do actually up my way in Groton. Question, the CPI, is that based on which CPI? There's a lot of CPIs. I know the ones the government uses for my Social Security, which I didn't get 2% this year, or the year before we got flat nothing, and the year before that flat nothing. Now all of a sudden they get 2% or more. What's that based on? And then I have another follow-up question.
Okay. Does somebody know the answer to that? Yes, you have to come to the microphone.
I think the one I used was CPI-U, which is the CPI Urban and CPI-W. I used both of them from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and averaged to make sure that I came up with an average because of the discrepancies.
Okay, well, that doesn't jive with what mine was with the CPI clerical and worker as well, as I remember the figures. But anyway, the follow-up that I did want to ask was, I know there was some pushback, I think, if I heard it right, from some teachers I overheard talking about, oh, now we got to bring a doctor's note in for 3 days. Guess what? Most industry does, including federal government. If you're out for 3 days, you got to go get a doctor's note to justify why you're out. I think that's justified. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve here. It's Hanser from Bristol. Two things. One, I got a question about insurance costs. What was the increase that they have to pay for, percentage-wise, if there was one? And also, keep in mind, they're saying 8% increase. You know, the cost of living is different from the step increases. Step increases are earned by their, I believe, time of employment, correct? So keep in mind, that's how we keep people here, by giving them step increases. And the cost of living, it's totally something separate. It's nothing to do with step increases. So it's the 2% has something to do with the cost of living.
Okay. What was your first question?
The insurance costs.
Okay.
How much are they paying? What's the difference?
Thank you. Hold on. Why don't we have the business manager answer it if he can?
If I get your question correct, you're looking to see if the percentages of what the teacher pays out. There will be increases as premiums increase, but the 1387% ratio that exists currently did not change over the course of this contract.
So their insurance costs hasn't changed?
It would remain the same at their share of the insurance premium would be 13%
Okay,
over
what
all
about
3 years.
Okay, what about the total cost of the insurance package? Did it go up?
It will technically go up as insurance premiums rise. I think we can all understand, and we are predicting that next year insurance premiums would go up about 9.6%. So expect that to occur, but that would be in the normal budget cycle. So as far as insurance costs for this contract versus what currently exists, there would be no increase in that.
Okay. I just also want everybody to keep in mind that insurance costs do rise, as we all know. So I, for one, I'm speaking just on my behalf, had a cost of living increase, and it did not cover the cost of the insurance increase. So keep that in mind when you vote for this. They deserve that 2%, please, because I lost money, even though I got a cost of living increase last year on my job.
Thank you. Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Natalie Murphy, Bridgewater. I'm on Social Security, and so I can tell you that in 2011, I got a 3.6 increase. In 2012, I got 1.7, and as of December 31, I got 1.5, equaling 6.8%. The newfound teachers didn't get anything near 6.8%. It was roughly about 1%. I'm very pleased that we're competitive in some of our salaries. I'm thrilled that our superintendent is in the top third salary in the state, But I don't like the discrepancy that our teachers are in the bottom third. We need to value education. I know people are frustrated. We could go on endlessly about what's wrong with the way we raise taxes in New Hampshire. But we're stuck with that. I'm asking you not to punish our teachers because they are the only salaries that you have control over in this day and age. Please keep that in mind. We need to value our educators. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Hill?
David Hill from Bristol. I'm just curious about the estimated cost numbers. If everything's going up 2% or whatever, why did the estimated cost in the middle frame there go down from 277 to 271 and then all of a sudden take a jump to 312? I understand the figures. Thank you.
Good.
One of the things to note in this contract are teachers are stepping up, so we do not hold them at their steps. You'll notice that once teachers from year 1 to year 2 that have stepped into, and so going from the base year, this current year 2014, into year 1, many teachers will, there are a handful of teachers that are going to move into that last step, step 15. They will not be seeing a step increase. So the proportional, this increase is only what the contract of a step and the cost of living increase would do. So we're not giving the total cost of teachers' wages, right? Just the increase based on this contract. So there's more teachers going to be at the that are going to be at the last step, only receiving the 2% in year 2. Does that answer your question? Okay.
If you want her to go first, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, I thought they were next.
She's
I
already
spoke
spoken
once.
once,
Okay.
so I'm going to give you the opportunity.
Sherry Nelson Groton. I do value our educators, and I value our taxpayers. And the ones that I have talked to in our newfound district, many of whom are paying 25 or 30% of their health care. And if their employer agrees to pay a little bit more of their health care, then they don't get a raise. And our teachers are getting everything. They're getting the raise, they're getting the cost of living, and they're having the taxpayers pay approximately 87% of the health care. And I think that's very unfair to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Walker from New Hampton. I can't help but think about an economic law that you go where the money is. I've had to do it myself, even when I didn't want to. I wanted to work locally, but I had to go where the money is. I don't want to see our teachers leave to get more money. Oh yes, related to that, there was a comment that I overheard that I haven't been able to verify, and that is that our grade schools are not measuring up and not meeting the standards. And I wonder how connected, how related that is, if that is so. Just an observation. Thank you.
Okay. Janet?
Again, Janet Cody from Bristol. The question I have is, are all employees that are eligible for health insurance in the district right now paying the same percentage?
Why don't you address that, if you would?
The answer to that is no. Administrators have a different compensation package. Support staff have a different compensation package as well. The teachers is specifically the bargained package.
Okay, so was part of the negotiations any concessions for percentage of health?
No, the health percentage remains the same as what was negotiated in the last contract, which is the 13% paid out by the employee and 87%. There are no other negotiated contracts at Newfound. There's only the one bargained agreement.
I would charge the school board to go back to the table and people to vote 2 on this, vote no on 2, and vote yes on 3, so that they can go back to the table and deal with cost items and possible concessions for health to make it equitable for all that are in the district.
Yes, ma'am.
Christine Duvall, New Hampton. Could you give us a breakdown on the days that the teachers now get the 25? It sounds like they could just get 25 days, but I don't think that's the case. I think they have to have specific reasons. And I think that would cut down on sub-costs because they're not going to be taking those 25 days.
Exactly what you're just...
Do they get broken down into personal days, sick days, bereavement days? That's what I was wondering if that happens.
Okay.
And hopefully they don't have to take things like bereavement days, and that wouldn't be the 25.
Okay, thank you.
So the days are broken down. So right now they get 19 authorized leave days. They will be broken down to 15 sick leave days. We'll continue to have a sick bank, 2 personal days, up to 5 bereavement days for the year for specific people, 2 professional development days, and then there's legal leave such as military leave, child rearing leave, jury duty leave. But it does specifically break it down for the different leaves.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Tina North, Bristol, New Hampshire, I just wanted to make a note that our school district, the whole area, came to us a couple years ago and made note that our schools cannot do it alone. And at our school now, there's a big list of increased responsibilities for our teachers, and that's not going to, with budget cuts, it's not going to go down. You know, you start eliminating positions, guidance counselors positions, stuff like that. It just forces our teachers to wear that many more hats. And as far as standards are concerned, they are just that, standards. Make no mistake that what's happening in our schools, with our teachers working so hard and our students working so hard, they're doing some amazing things, and the standards are that in the everyday part of their lives. They're doing great, and I just want our community to be aware of that.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Moderator. Eric Ronacher, Bristol. While we're giving the raises to the teachers, how many teachers' aide jobs are being cut at the same time? I understand there's like 15 teachers' aide positions that are 19?
There's 19.5.
19.5. Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the teachers who are getting these raises, are they going to be stepping up to carry the load that these teachers' aides have been carrying all this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Carol?
Carol Huber from Bristol. Could I get a breakdown of what the administrators, the teachers, and the support staff actually pay for their health insurance?
I think they gave us the, do you want percentages or do you want?
Well, I know the teachers pay 13%.
Yep.
What is the percent that administration pays and the percent that support staff pays?
Okay, so you're looking for the percentage, not a total dollar amount.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So at this point, all administrators pay 12% of their health insurance package. And support staff is on a scale depending on how much, what their salary is. Give me 1 second. So copay, if an employee makes between $0 and $15,000 a year, they pay 5%. Between $15,000 and $30,000, they pay 8%, and over $30,000, they pay 12%. So it's based on how much their income is, what their salary is.
Okay, thank you. I also have a comment that I find it quite interesting that our superintendent is in the top third in the state of New Hampshire, yet our school seems to be in the bottom third. I don't know how we can fix that.
Okay, thank you. Any other, before we close debate, any other questions or comments?
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to move the question.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I have this lady here who's at the microphone, so I'm going to give her an opportunity to speak, and then I'll oh. Did you want to speak too? Why don't you, Lloyd, do you mind going up there? Okay, I'm going to let this lady speak, and I'm going to let this gentleman speak, and then we'll have a motion to close debate, okay?
Jennifer
Jen.
LaRochelle Hebron. Just to clarify the gentleman's question, the support staff could choose to be unionized. They could organize themselves and bargain for themselves, as we as teachers do, but they have not chosen to do that. So their benefit package, their salary package is at the will of the administration. It is not connected in any way to the numbers you see on the screen. This is about the teacher contract because we are a negotiated organization.
Good morning. Lloyd Belbin from Bristol. I thought you should have all the facts on this before you voted. The school board has had their say. The budget committee has had their say. So I think I should give you any facts that they weren't given out so you could vote intelligently. I am a voter and taxpayer of Bristol, and I pay the same tax as everybody else in Bristol. The figures given by the budget committee, I went over them and I agree with them. The step one, the teachers the first year would go from $34,370 to $39,625, a raise of $5,255 or 15+%. Somebody on step 3, step 10 would go, making now $46,313. They would go to $59,485, a raise of $8,172 or 17.5%. The total 3-year cost of this for the district would be $861,000, $451. The impact, which we listened in Bristol, would be $25 on your tax rate the first year for each $100,000 of valuation. If you had $200,000 valuation, it would cost you $50 the first year. The second year would cost you $50 for the first $100,000 and $100 for the second, for anybody with $200,000. Year 3 would be $75 per $100,000 for a taxpayer in Bristol, and then anybody with $200,000 valuation would cost you $150. This is for this article only. Bristol, you got to remember, Bristol taxpayers, you pay 31.8% of the budget. A town like Bridgewater pays 8.1%, so it means a lot to you. It's up to you. It's your decision. Thank you.
Okay. I did say we were going to call a question, but Chairman Migliore said he had something, it was just a technical thing to correct, so I'm just going to let him do that.
Yeah, just before we close discussion on this, there was a unintentional, accurate misrepresentation in the mailer. Translation, there was an error. The correction is in your handout, and it has to do with the very last page. If you look at the last matrix that's at the very bottom of page 29, that is the correct version of what should have been put in the mailer. That is the current matrix as it stands, and that was the expectation with what we had when we were up against the deadline to get that mailer out. It turns out that the matrix that was included in the mailer was year 2 of the proposed raise distribution if it passed. So in effect, it was accurate, and if we labeled it as such, it would have been correct. That's why I say it was an unintended misrepresentation. So the fact is that this matrix is the current matrix that should show distribution, and that alters the middle comment that says, or the first comment that says, in year one, 43% of the current staff are at maximum step. It would not realize a step increase, just a 2% cost of living. Thank you.
Okay, you ready to close debate? What?
May I say one more thing, please?
I made a motion. Yeah, basically, Eric, I told everybody that we would close debate after that, and I gave everybody that opportunity, so that's what we're going to do. And I think Archie Ocean made a motion to close debate, did he not? No. Who did? Mr. Capsalis made the motion, and who seconded it? Yeah, Slim did. So, and so what you're doing, the effect of this, everybody has to understand the effect of this. Basically, we're going to close debate here today. The article has not been amended. So what's going to happen when we close debate here today on this article is going to appear on your ballot on March 11th, just as it appears here today, as you've seen it here today on your warrant. So if you basically vote yes today, we're going to end our discussion today to close debate, end our discussion. It's going to show up on your ballot just as it is unamended on your ballot on March 11th, okay? If you were to vote no to close debate, then I guess we'd discuss it more. So I think you're done discussing it, frankly. So all those in favor of closing debate signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let's move on. Article 3, for a provision for special meeting, shall the district, if Article 2 is defeated, authorize the Newfound Area School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 2 cost items only. The school board voted to recommend the article 6-1, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The purpose of this article is to save the district some money in the event that the Article 2 is defeated at the polls, and you would like us to go back and address just the cost items, which would be the 3-year numbers that you see before you in Article 2. That would allow us to hold us to go back to the negotiating table, would that the Teachers Association would want to, and then present it to the district without having to go to the court to request a special meeting.
Any questions or comments? Anybody want to move to close the debate? Was Mr. Legault up there? Sean Legault to close, and who else was? And Janet Cody voted, seconded that. All those in favor of closing debate signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? It'll appear on your ballot just as it appears on your warrant today. Article 4, appointment of trustees of the trust fund. Shall the school district vote to approve the town of Bristol's trustees of the trust funds to be holder of the school's trust funds to be in compliance with RSA 35:2, custody of school district reserves. School board voted to recommend the article 6-1. And who might be speaking to that? Come on.
This is actually no more than a clerical matter. When I came into the district, we noticed that your trust funds and reserves were held by the SAU office. It's actually not legal. So there's 3 points to be made on this. First, it's the law. That's always good to have behind you. Second, the Department of Revenue Administration, DRA, will disallow future use of the district's illegally held trust and reserve funds. Number 3, any attempt, I've had numerous conversations with the Attorney General's office, any attempt by the school board to appoint their own trustees will be fought by the New Hampshire Attorney General's office. You can go to the next slide. So first, what funds does this affect? These are your trust funds, your capital reserve funds, and any other reserve funds. Private trust, scholarship funds, our expendable trust for facilities, and so on. And why did we put this in here for your vote? Usually there is a clause in the founding of your school district, of this cooperative, that would establish who would be the trustees of these funds. We went back to 1964, read through all the minutes, tried to find this. There wasn't one. So we actually have to vote on appointing the trustees of the trust funds, which is what this article is all about. And here is the RSA for that. Whenever any capital reserve of a school